All right. Chuck Patterson, welcome to the Passion Project.
Super stoked.
Dude, I'm so stoked to have you here. Thank you. If there's anybody that I was like, I think I told you this yesterday, if there's anybody that I was like, I don't know if he's going to make it. Because once the listeners start to understand who I've got in the room, and a lot of people will know you, but if you've spent the last 30 plus years chasing weather patterns, whether it be purple blobs of giant surf or big dumps in the mountains and backcountry, that's you chasing those. And so I was like, oh, we have both of those going on right now. Like, Where's Chuck going? What airplane is he on? Where's he driving? And so the fact that I got you here with that going on, I very much appreciate it. So
super stoked to be here, though. It's
super
awesome.
Good to see you. Yeah. Super fun. Again, some of it's conversational. Some I just got to set up who's in the room. Chuck, I've always, just by way of intro, I've always I think of you as this incredible athlete because you are, and what you do and how you do it. But like, if there's a person that represents the Passion Project, like the kind of people I like to have in here, super rad people doing super cool things, like with a big smile. I always like the Chuck Patterson $5 million smile. Just rad. Like, I'm so grateful to have you here, and your story is amazing and what you do. And what I'll start by saying is, if you are into ocean sports, you know Chuck Patterson. If you're into big mountain snow and snow-related ski, snowboarding, you know Chuck Patterson. If you're into wind sports, windsurfing, kiting, and other crazy shit that you do, you know Chuck Patterson. So it's really amazing. There's not that many people that have the incredible sports athletic background at the highest levels like you do. And so for today, what I'm excited about is not to share the story, because your story's out there. Like, people can go dig and find you online quite a bit. There's a lot of stuff about you, but there's also a lot of stuff that isn't captured in there. And we were talking earlier, like, that's the stuff that I'm excited to talk about. Like, how do you do all the things that you do at the highest level? How did you get here? Like, what are the challenges? And then we get into the whole business side of it, which is a big part of, like, how do you fund all this? The business of sport has changed a lot in the time that you've been doing what you do. How do you maintain a level of fitness for the last 30 plus years at this level? Like, these are all things that most of us normal humans don't, it's not something we worry about or think about. So being able to unpack it with you, I'm super excited. So super rad. And then the last thing, and then I'll turn it over to you, is there's only a few people on the planet that have the skill sets that you have. So from big ocean, like giant fucking ocean, big wind, big mountain, like there's very few people that can cross over between giant waves, giant backcountry skiing at the highest levels, wind at that same level. And then you've got magazine shots, covers, center spreads, video parts, movies on all these sports. Like, most of us just want to get one. Like, I want to be good at one sport, and you're a master of so many of them. So like, how does somebody really spend their life dedicated to that stuff and still have a social life and a great outlook and a family and all those things? So I know I just blabbered all over, but that's like, when I think of you, well, like, if I talk to a pro athlete and they're a one sport athlete, like, it's pretty narrow. And how did you get to be here? How did you get to the Olympics? How did you get to the national team? But Chuck, like, we're going to talk about how did you get all of these things when you're competing against and playing with people that are like specialists. I always wonder, like, how did people can do, like, Chuck has 18 world-class sports playing with people that's all they do. They're a specialist in this one. So just, those are the things I think about when I think about people like, how do we do it? But this is all about you. I want to go in the Wayback Machine. And understand how you got here. Like, the story's out there, but it's really cool, and we'll connect the dots and we'll keep going from there. So, can we just jump in the Wayback Machine and talk about, like, because growing up is super interesting for you. I'm gonna end with a story, and then I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Okay.
No. When I first met you, so we go back a minute. I met you 20 years ago, I would guess.
I was trying to think about that before.
So I think we met through, I'm guessing it was Tim Carr, mutual friend.
That's right.
I think you were probably coaching him on kiting back in the day.
Exactly.
And I think you were on his boat for one of our crossings, one of our prone channel crossings.
That's right.
That's when we met. But back then it was pre-social media, really kind of before the internet was big. So people only knew of athletes by way of magazines, newspapers. So with you, I only knew a little sliver that you were, I think, doing some coaching with Tim on kiting.
Yeah.
None of that other stuff. Like there was no way to go, who is this? Can't look him up on LinkedIn, can't look him up on Instagram and go, hey, who is this guy? And whoa, he does this and this. Like none of that was known at the time. So I learned about you, I think like most people, bit by bit by bit. And there was stories of, oh, Chuck, the guy that you met, he also has like a world record ski jump.
Oh, yeah.
And like he's a skier too. And then like, oh, Chuck's like at the very beginning of Tow-In with Laird and those guys, like early on. Oh, Chuck's doing that. Like I was like, hold on, like how is that possible? So that was like my first introduction to you. And then at the very beginning of stand-up paddling, I got into it and we actually paddled. We went a couple times. I think I have a Chuck Patterson Hobie Stinger model still in my quiver somewhere.
No way.
Yeah.
I just gave mine away.
Really? So I have your likeness on a board still in my garage somewhere.
That's just too funny.
It's that's why I'm so excited to have you here. There's so much that you do. And the way I learned about you, and I've been able to watch, like most people, I've been able to watch you do all of these things that most humans will never do. So that's why we're here. So let's,
so basically, starting kind of like from the way beginning, I mean, I was blessed with awesome parents, you know, and I think a lot of it comes from that. So my dad was a nuclear physicist, and my mother she went to school for physics and stuff, but she was also kind of a badass athlete. So she was a big time ski racer from Austria, you know, Germany. And then when she came over to the US, her passion turned into, you know, from skiing, we did that all the time, but then it was really, she got into like big boat, you know, sailing and then windsurfing. And then she became a pro windsurfer. And that was like the best of both worlds. And so for me, I mean, I have, you know, a sister, 2 years younger, super smart. So she got all that from my dad. Me, I followed behind my mom and was all about sports. And I was totally driven by that. And I think, you know, so I was born in the U.S., in Northern California, and then shortly after moved to Germany. And so my first language was German. So it was kind of a trip. I mean, for me, I knew nothing anyway. You know, I was like anything different. But to go there and live there, I went to a school that was run by nuns at a church. And then we literally had to hike through snow in the wintertime to get to class or whatever. And then that was kind of just a brief time. You know, and then after that, we moved to Berkeley, and that's where kind of life really kind of opened up for me.
Hold on. So a couple things. One, do you still speak German?
Oh, yeah.
So you guys were just back there.
Yeah,
and
we were just
when you get there, you're able to totally speak the language.
Well,
and communicate.
it's kind of like you get on the plane, and then, you know, it's like Lufthansa or United or whatever, and then the stewardesses are talking German, and suddenly I'm like, okay, so stuff starts to come back. And then I always tell myself it takes a good day of hanging out with my relatives or whatever, and then things just come back. Yeah, and at the time when I was a kid learning it, I hated it. You know, I was like, really? Why do we live in America? Why? You know, and then now I kind of look at it and go, man, I'm so stoked I learned that stuff. Right? And that it's, even my relatives this last trip were like, I can't believe you still speak it. And I'm like going, it's awesome. I don't know.
That's so rad. Well, I mean, what's interesting about this story, like one, that's cool. I didn't realize the Germany connection. But the funny part is when you talked about your dad being so one of the other, I was telling the story earlier about how I was hearing bits and pieces about you. That was one of the other like enigma things. Like, hold on. His parents are pro windsurfer and rocket scientist. Yeah. Like, and you're like, no, there's no friggin' way that can't be true. But like, all of these little things are true, and it's just rad. But like, those were the things back then. You're like, there wasn't any way to validate it.
Yeah.
And you would just hear stories, and you're like, oh, who would have thought? So super cool. So, and you guys moved to Berkeley.
Yeah, so we moved to Berkeley, and then that was kind of like, all right, we're embedded, we're where we want to be. And my mom's love for snow was like, that was mandatory in the family. So my dad wasn't a great skier. In fact, he was pretty horrible, but he tried. So we would go up to Tahoe, and that's kind of where our whole, you know, love for Tahoe and everything was. We had a killer camper, and we'd go up there and spend 3-4 days a week at Heavenly. Wow. And we were little kids. Like I think when I started, I think I was just 2 years old. And then my sister was born. and my sister was in the backpack, and I'm between my mom's legs, and skiing, and that was our thing, and we started
Heavenly?
from that. Yeah, at Heavenly, and then we that was the thing that just started, my love for sports, and going from there. And I just remember looking, as I got older, looking up at Gun Barrel, which was that big, front face full of moguls and stuff, and watching these freestyle skiers rip through there. And I'm like, I'm going to do that one day, but I'm not going to get coached to do it. I was very visual, so it was all about that. And then I got really into skiing and just loved, where it took me in that feeling, and being, kind of, you're that solo warrior of, it's not a team sport. It's like you're out there conquering the mountain on your own. And that's just, for me, it was something special. And then being able to, as I got older, watching my mom and following in her footsteps, I'd always go to all her windsurfing races and her windsurfing, training days and stuff. And so I get pulled out of class early, and I was like, yeah, I'm all about that.
So hold on, 3 to 4 days a week, you're up at Tahoe.
Yeah.
And then you're getting pulled out of class to go to windsurf with
As
mom.
I got older, that was the thing. So
for super studious, educated parents, they had a very alternative look at things, right? Like if they're this is way more important than school. That's a decision they were making, right?
Yeah, I mean, school was still very important, especially on my dad's look of it. Was like, nah, school is huge. But as we were younger, it was like sports and being outside and going on trips, like family, was super important. So I think school really, as I got, in my teens, then it became very important and very eminent of like, hey, you need to now, spend time getting good at school and doing your homework and whatnot before you can really, pursue sports. And that was a tough thing, because sports became, my massive love. And then school, I ended up kind of degrading on that side, and, flunked a couple times on, certain classes, and then had to really, buckle down. And that's where my dad kind of came in. And I remember him telling me like, hey, you can do anything you want. I will make anything happen for you, but you got to do good in school. And I was like, all right. And that was like the toughest thing for me, was to like buckle down, pay attention. I was always a class clown. So, for me, I just,
what a shock.
Yeah. So for me, it was like, all right, so I had to buckle down. I had a tutor, this and that. And slowly but surely things worked. And then, it started to happen. And then I ended up getting straight A's. And I remember my dad looked at me and said, now you have no excuse. That should be the norm. And I was like, what have I done?
Set the bar high, got to keep it high.
But from there, the sports thing then became like,
when you say sports,
#1.
What were the sports? Was this?
Well, skiing was, I'm just saying, as I was younger, I didn't know where any of that was going to go, but I knew it was my passion. I mean, it just grew bigger and bigger. And then being able to go and travel with my mom and go to windsurf races, then I got into windsurfing, because it was like, well, what am I going to do? Sit there and watch? No. And then my mom got me into that. And then we pretty much, we had winter and summer kind of covered with, we were always doing something, and then going to the beach. And so my love for the mountains was, kind of at the beginning, that was like our thing. And then, doing the ocean thing. And then, so I really had this awesome balance, like summertime, we're at the beach, we're windsurfing, surfing, whatever. And then wintertime was all about snow. And so those were my two worlds, no matter where we were. And that kind of was the foundation of opening my eyes to more things as I got older.
Got it. In the windsurf, so windsurfing, this is you're talking the 80s, 90s?
Yeah. Late 80s.
Late 80s.
I mean, for me, where
so
it started to make
early in the
sense.
windsurfing game back then, right?
Yeah. I mean, my mom was kind of more in the early, kind of where it started, where they had like the teak booms and the one design board with one big sail that looked like a pillowcase.
So they were doing more speed racing, or was it?
It was more course board racing and stuff. And then they started redesigning, boards, for speed. So they did a lot of like speed sailing and stuff. And then the wave sailing thing ended up, kind of growing huge in Maui. And that was kind of like the cool part of
Would you guys,
windsurfing.
was she into the waves too?
Not as much. She did a bunch of course board sailing where they'd go in and out through the surf and stuff. But when it came to wave sailing, that wasn't her thing. She was all about doing the long runs and
Just
course board and just kind of, getting your early in, like, where do you start? Where's the best way to start? And then being able to overcome people, at buoys and be able to make it. And then she just...
So it's sailing. I mean, it's tactics. And
exactly.
Got it. Yeah. Got it. And so you get into that at the same time?
Yeah. So I got into it. I got into racing stuff and it was super fun. But for me, I kind of started to kind of gravitate more towards wave sailing and going on trips. And my love for waves kind of really grew. And I started kind of surfing late. I remember I went on a trip with my mom, or the whole family, to Maui, and she was there for an event. And
Were the events always at Hukipa? Like they still are?
Yeah, there was a bunch there, and then down at Kanaha, which was more course sailing and stuff. And that was just one event that was at the beginning of winter and stuff. And I remember I got a bodyboard. I was like, I don't have any surfboards. I don't know how to surf or anything. But, I rented a bodyboard for the week, and I was out every day, all day, and just boogie boarding. And just, I think I was 11 years old, And then after that, we got on the plane on our way home. And I bought a surfer magazine, and I'm looking at it, and I still remember the cover. It was just awesome. And I read and looked at every photo back to back. The end of that trip, I was like, I want to get a surfboard. And then my dad, mom were just like, well, you're going to have to work for it. We ain't giving it to you. So I worked hard anyway and got it, and finally got a surfboard. And then from there, it just opened up. And we lived an hour and a half, in Northern California inland. So to go to the beach, it wasn't you can go every day. Yeah, it wasn't like this. So for me, it was a trip. So I lived for every moment when mom and dad were like, we're going to the beach. I'm like, yes, okay, cool. And then I'd be in the water all day trying to figure out the surf thing. And I didn't have any mentors or anyone that was coaching. It was like, yeah, I surf. I'm totally, I got a board. I'm jumping in the water. I got my ass handed to me and I can barely make it out of the white water, but I love it. And then finally things started to click. And then I remember we'd always go to Mexico to San Felipe, kind of Baja coast. But we were always on the inland side for windsurfing in the wintertime. So we'd go there for a good couple weeks, and I brought my surfboard. And I remember we had this gnarly windy day, and they get these low tides that are 20-foot tides, and you have these big sand islands everywhere. And so I went out, and I remember getting my first ride in an area that's not known for surf. Yeah, in San Felipe. And I was out, and I was just, that's it, sucked into it. And when I came home, I was like, that's it, I'm all over it. And then it slowly, it was a slow process, but I remember that time with my dad where he was like, I'll give you anything. You do good at school. And so that was kind of at that time where I was like, all right, I want you to take me, to surf, And so, he wasn't into surfing, but he was so methodical on his vision on, he would check things out. It was like Rain Man. It was a trip. He would look at, I remember we pulled up at Half Moon Bay and Princeton Breakwalls, this little corner, and they had a surf contest. And we're sitting there in the car, and I'm like, Dad, we should go down there. He goes, no, let's just watch. And so we're sitting there, half an hour goes by, and I'm all, and they had heats of 4, and I'm like, so where are they going? So he goes, well, it looks like we got, 4 guys out, and, longest ride, this and that, and I think that's what they're going on. So we walked down there is exactly what was happening.
He applied his skill set to monitor and assess what's going on.
I was going, really? And so I never really thought my dad's not a surfer, but he knows everything, and so.
But more importantly, Dad saw the means to an end.
Totally. Yeah.
The motivation. He wants to surf. He'll do well in school.
Yeah.
So he figured you out pretty quick.
Oh, yeah. Well, he knew exactly how to bait me or how it was going to work. It was either I was going to be really bad at school and not be a failure, but just maybe not uphold of what, he wants in his child, or I would finally figure it out and maybe I would bail on sports and, go, because it was all about going physics and this and that. And I was really intrigued by it, but sports really took me. So I got the best of both worlds, basically. My dad, instilled, the hard work ethic as far as being good at school and really paying attention and being a problem solver, which he was amazing at. And then the sports thing I got from my mom. And so I had to work for it. It didn't come to me on a platter, and it just kind of went from there. And I have to say, looking back at it, it was all about timing. My timing was impeccable when it came to exploring new sports. Like I always, after having skiing and snowboarding kind of as a foundation, as a kid, and then going into water sports and windsurfing.
But snowboarding was
happened
while
later.
you were, later, exactly. You were the very beginning of snowboarding.
Totally.
Absolute beginning, right?
Yeah.
Because we're about the same. How old are you for context?
56.
Okay, we're the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned to snowboard when they first came out in high school.
Exactly.
So you already had this big base of skiing. You knew the mountains, you knew the whole thing, and you could then apply it on a board.
Exactly. And we were, at that time, we were big time Squaw Valley locals. That was our thing. We, lived and breathed Squaw Valley. And I remember that it was rad because anyone under 12 could ski free. That's no more. But so we were all about that mountain. And I remember snowboarding started. And, Burton came out with a killer board, and same with Sims. And then they only allowed it at Boreal, which was, kind of a small hill, but containable, not allowed anywhere like at Squaw Valley. So I remember I had wood shop in school, and I took plywood and made this kind of like funky board. And because I couldn't afford, what was I going to do?
Is this one where you put like the straps on, wear your sorrels, that type
That's
of thing?
exactly what it was. And I took an old wetsuit and basically cut it in half and made that my foot strap, and then took basically a staple gun and just slammed it in there, and then fiberglass the bottom and put wax underneath where my sorels were. And then I remember hiking up, from the parking lot at Squaw. They had this from the 1960 Olympics, they had this big ski jump that was there, and it always would get hit with insane powder, and it was always closed off. So the powder stayed there forever. So I remember hiking up after 4 o'clock when the mountain was closed, going up in the trees, and then carving turns. And for some weird reason, it all came together. It wasn't hard, and it was pow, and I was like, this is insane. So I did it as much as possible. Then I got a job at Dave's ski shop, which was in town, and they got the first new snowboards. And then I remember working and got my first board. And then after that, I was like, okay, I'm going to Boreal. And then at that time, you had to kind of do a certification. So you had a card that showed that you were a snowboarder.
Really?
Yeah. And so I had that. And then basically I was to go to Boreal, so you could get a ticket and you could ride. And I think that only lasted for a little bit. And then other mountains kind of opened it up, and Squaw, this and that. And I just loved it because it had that surfing aspect of it, and the skiing, I was so on it. Skiing was still number one, but the snowboarding thing was cool. And I remember that's when stuff started to really explode, and people were like, nah, snowboarders and skiers don't mix and whatever. And I kind of loved both. So I just kind of stayed in the middle of it and, started competing at it. And then it was just like, dude, it's just as good. But
were you competing in skiing as well?
Yeah, so jumping a little forward, as I got older, like probably 18 to 20, I was skiing at Squaw a ton. And that was kind of my thing. So when I graduated high school, my mom had bought a killer hotel on the water. And so that was in North Shore, in Carnarvon Bay. And it was called Lakeside Chalets.
That was like Jay Wild and Anik, right?
Exactly, right next door. Yeah. Wow. So we went there, and my deal was, well, I'm graduating. I'm going to go up and work. Because I graduated a semester early. So that was right in the middle of winter.
That you can see the brain here. Comes right down dad's side, both parents, right?
So it all came together. And I was like, Mom, I'm going to move up to Tahoe, and I'll run the place, and then I'm going to ski all winter, And so that's where it kind of came out. So I remember I had to manage the hotel. I had to clean, all the 5 cabins before, check-in, which was like 3 o'clock. So I'd like power all night, or I'd be lazy and I'd just try to get out early and get power runs, and then come back at like 12 o'clock and be like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And kind of redo the beds and whatever. But I made it work. And then go on. So that kind of became like the thing. And then I had a really good balance. And then from there, they had these, like I was doing the mogul, skiing. I really was into that, and I was into racing, but it was kind of boring. It wasn't really anything. And then the extreme ski tour kind of started, and that kind of ignited a lot of like racers got into it, because now we were able to ski zones that were usually closed. but you could ski these clip bands, and the snow would be insane there because they weren't open to the public. And then you had to basically use your imagination of skiing the sickest line, and hopefully the judges, saw that this was insane or whatever. You had to do big airs. And so it really kind of opened up my eyes to like, dude, this is creative now. It's not like you're skiing and doing, just gates or in a perfectly groomed place. Now you're skiing something that you've got to deal with. It's kind of like surfing. It's every wave is different. So
I was going to say, I think that as we go through your career and all the things that you do in big surf and how you've approached it, like that makes perfect sense. Like that extreme approach where you're not just doing groom lines, you're not doing GS, you're not doing slalom, you're doing like, you're starting there, you're going to end up here, and you get to do whatever you want between the 2 points, right?
Totally. Yeah. And it kind of became really addicting because once the tour started and a lot of us were kind of, all good, everybody was ripping skiers. So for me, the first couple events, I kind of was doing a lot of just watching and then doing my best and not really doing that great, And then finally when snowboarding kind of kicked in, snowboarding had its own tour, but then suddenly these events kind of came together with sponsorship and whatever, and they had skiing and snowboarding. And I remember one of the first big events was at Squaw Valley, and we skied. They opened up some terrain for us that was just awesome. And so I remember my first day, and I kind of was like, had my thing going. I knew my strong suit, and I loved to go big airs, and I wouldn't land everything, So I got this pretty sad, name given to me, Huck Splatterson. So basically, I would send it, and I would just eat shit, But I pulled together, and then, and as things got better, I learned more, and then I could ski out of lines or whatever. So
hold on, that may be the title for this podcast, Huck Splatterson.
Terrible.
That's
terrible.
But okay, there's so many things about this that we could go down with you. We could go down 5 different podcasts. We could talk about snow. We could talk about wind. We could talk about surf. We could talk business. We could talk about longevity and everything else. Let me go back real quick. So at this time, you're living up there at this hotel. So you're post high school.
Yeah.
Mom and dad are happy with where you're going. Dad wanted you to go down a more like education route.
He was all about that. But I think for me, it was keeping me out of trouble, because, and I mean, not that I was a troublemaker, but it was like, he knew exactly that sports was my thing. And I really needed to something to be passionate about. And that was like right there, so I think they were both very happy that I was working the family business. I was staying out of trouble. I was working, and they knew where to find me. So it was like, for me, it was the best thing ever. And I look back at like, dude, I was so lucky. I mean, to have a hotel to run, and I wasn't the greatest, and it wasn't even my priority. I was all about skiing and snowboarding. So when it came back, there was times where, maybe I didn't make all the beds perfect, and maybe I didn't vacuum everything, but
it was close.
At that time it was still clean, and all the, all our, all the people that came were super stoked. We had a beautiful place. So I mean,
imagine. Well, Tahoe is incredible, and that was the hotbed for the beginning of snowboarding.
Totally.
For a lot of the big mountain stuff. Like a lot of this, so you were in, I'm guessing we could play the name game with you and a lot of the people that other people that are very well known in the ski space from that time, like, because that again was like the front edge of this big mountain stuff, the snowboarding stuff, and you were right there. I
mean, we had like, my mentor was basically, and for a lot of people, was Scott Schmidt. I mean, he was insane. So he skied there a lot. Then there was guys like Kevin Andrews and Mike Hattrup, guys that were just pinnacles in epic skiing, and they were in Warren Miller movies and stuff. And they shot a lot of stuff in Squaw, like all the time, which is now Palisades. But so I was able to run with the next generation crew, but right with those guys. And I remember we had an insane crew of like maybe 8 to 10 guys and girls that would go and rip and hit every section that the patrollers would open. And, mainline pocket, Palisades, whatever. And it was all about big airs or super sketchy lines where you're doing these staircases and then sending it and coming out into the flats. And so for me, I just had the best coaches that didn't know that they were coaches, but they inspired me. And I just remember the one time where I really figured out the air thing that I loved. and my love for it was we were on the top of Mainline Pocket, which was this big section of cliffs that, got a lot of, snow and wind affected there. But I remember we had just incredible snow, and we're all a crew, and everybody would just do their line. Okay, I'm going to go to the left, I'm going to go to the right, and what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to send the whole thing and whatever. And this guy, Lynn McClure, was just this larger than life, guy that just loved skiing and had so much stoke. So he just was always all about, all right, dude, just send it, And so I remember I was looking at this air, and I really wanted to kind of impress, the boys, and just, and I wanted to do something totally new. And my sister was skiing with us. She was a badass skier. So, we're all there, and I just remember I kept looking, I go to the edge, I'm okay, I throw a snowball, and I'm like, oh, that's like probably 40 feet. And I'm like, okay, I want to land out there. And then, he'd be all like, all right, dude. And I'd go back and look at it, and then I'd go back, and then I'd do that like 4 or 5 times. He'd go, dude, you look at it once, you back up, and you send it. You're creating doubt. And I'm like, oh my God, you're totally right. So I just remember I looked once, threw the snowball, and I hiked back. And I just looked the other way, and I turned around and said, on it! And I just skated into it and sent it. And I sent it way bigger than I thought. And it was lucky. It was deep pow. And I just, big old, basically hot tub landing is what I call it. Just explosion, then came out skiing, and I was like, oh, dude! And I was like, from that day on, it was like all about that. And we had such a good crew that everybody was insane skiers, and I was playing catch up. And then suddenly we're all doing the same thing.
How big was that one, do you think?
It's probably like 40 feet, and it was, but over a lot of rock and stuff.
To me, looks like it's 100. But that brings, so a couple things. If anybody's listening, I let you go down this path on ski because it sets the tone, because a lot of people know you from the water, the big water world.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of this, but you start to hear the connection between your ability to send it, how you look at things over the ledge. That applies to surf.
Totally,
especially in the size. I mean, you're looking at, you were riding waves that are 60 foot, and you're sending it. It's the same thing. And I'm guessing you're learning this comfort with hucking it, not being afraid to be Huck Splatterson and to eat shit and come back and learn from it, and learn from mentors, whether they know they're mentoring you or not, and really getting comfortable in big conditions, I think applies to everything you've done, because you can apply that to your wind sports and your willingness and ability to huck and go huge and not have a fear. Most of us, if we're going big for the first couple times in a new sport, but you've already got this skill set. You've got this huge base of big things, going fast, landing hard, knowing how, it must apply all the way through.
I mean, that was a neat thing. I think skiing in general, like you think about it, just to kind of pick it apart a little bit. As a kid, you're maybe 4 or 5, skiing, and you're not holding mom's hand. You're kind of ripping. You could go 70 miles an hour if you just pointed it. But, you slow down, this and that, you get turns going. There is no sport like that as a kid that you can learn and get into and have all those things at your fingertips. You can send it off a rock. You can, point it down the cat track and probably go 40 miles an hour, at like 8 years old. Really? Is that, and this was way before helmets. But that was like a thing. That was like what families do, and it's what families still do. But it's rad when you really look at that. That was the insane part of it that kind of gave me confidence in everything else. And it really, I'd like to say, the sport of skiing and snowboarding complemented the water side. You look at a wave, just the shape of it at the top of, if you're paddling into something like that, you end up at the top of the wave. You're looking down, it's like a 60-foot cornice or something like that. You're, about to drop in.
You're like, I've done this before. Yeah. I've got this, right?
Well, dude, so basically now just moving a little forward. So I got into, after the skiing thing, I really loved doing the events, and I ended up winning a couple combo events where I basically ski. You'd get 2 runs, on your skis and 2 runs on snowboard. And so the competition directors were like going, hey, we don't have people that are doing both. So we'll try to work it out and kind of shuffle you in or whatever. So I do a run on my skis and, big airs, whatever, ski a gnarly line, and instantly go back to the bottom, grab my snowboard boots and my snowboard and take the chair all the way back up. And then, they go, okay, Chuck's in. All right, you're the next guy in. And then what I tried to do, because I started to get really good at it, I would mimic the same line on my snowboard, maybe not go as big, but I got to a point where I was hitting airs and doing lines like I did on my skis, on my snowboard. And I was just like going, dude, this is awesome. So in one part, I skied twice the amount of runs, but I got very familiar with the terrain. And so that confidence just got bigger and bigger. And then come the finals, I remember it was at Granite Chief Peak, and we had a ton of snow, and there was this big section of rock that was probably 80, 90 feet. And I remember we got so much snow that slid into the sides at the top that if you're a maniac or whatever, or if your vision was like, dude, if I can ski and get on that rib and just send it straight, I could send the whole cliff. You know, it was like that mentality. It was, if you wanted to win, you had to do something like that. And I remember there was this girl that was a pro snowboarder, Morgan LaFonte, incredible athlete. And I'm up there waiting for my turn. And I watch her, and she goes down the ridge and sends this huge backflip, sticks it. I mean, she went like 40 feet, 50 feet or whatever, sticks it. And I'm just like going, that's what this event is about, you know? And so I remember my mom was down in the finish line area, you know, with all my friends and stuff. And at that time, I was all about skiing downhill skis, you know, downhill racing skis. So I had a pair of 220s, and for me, it allowed me to basically handle high speeds, and I just loved going big with those things. So it really suited my style. So I'm there at the top with my skis, and I'm looking at this line, I'm watching a guy ski, and a lot of the girls were sending it off the side, and I'm like going, dude, you're going to have to better that, you know? And I remember looking at it, and I'm like, all right, dude, I'm going to do it. So my name, you know, came up, and they're all right, dude, you ready? And I'm like, yep. And I looked, and I just had it in my mind, and I just skated, and I rode this little rib straight off the edge and just sent the whole thing to the bottom and fat to flat. I mean, Huck Splatterson to the max. I mean, I landed so hard, big old,
How big was that? How big of it?
That was probably 70, 80 feet, you know, and landed super hard, blew up powder. And I just remembered just moving, you know, in it to get myself going, and ended up skiing out of the big explosion. So the judges didn't really see like, oh dude, he cased it, you know, and then skied a bunch of, you know, killer lines through the trees and one little air, and then right into the finish line. And I see my mom, and she was like this, you know, with her hands over her eyes, just going. All my buddies were all, and I was like, dude, that just fired me up. And I, you know, went back on my snowboard and didn't go as big, but did another line, and I ended up winning the combined. And I was like, you know what? That's what it's all about. You know, I like doing things where people are like, yeah, dude, people don't do that. That's just not the norm. And I was like, you know what? That's my norm.
Has that been your motivator?
It was like kind of like, I love being able to think about something, and kind of, you know, it's like when you're a kid in school and you're drawing that wave that's like 300 feet high, and then a little guy, and you're like, and he's getting a barrel, and you're like, oh no, dude, you know? And it was kind of like that, where I was like, dude, that's coming to life, you know? So for me,
hold on, here's the difference. Most of us draw that and go, that's a cool drawing. You were going, I want to go friggin' do that. And you've done that.
Totally. But it took a lot to get there. But I look at all these steps in sports were like these baby steps that went into it. And I was going, and it totally kind of set me up to go to the next. And that's where I say where timing came. So kind of going back, I learned to ski, got into snowboarding. The competition side of it really kind of allowed me to kind of gain more confidence, and really kind of made a name for myself. Then I was doing, you know, filming trips. I do a bunch of stuff for the magazines. You know, Powder Magazine would go, hey, we want you to go to Alaska, or we want you to go to Crested Butte and get some POW shots with photographers. And I had a lot of awesome, you know, trips with these photographers that really kind of changed my life, you know, and you had to be on it. It was different, you know, from video pieces. You were looking at just doing an air and getting that one shot. So it didn't matter if you ate shit or not. And I was like, you know what? I'm having fun. I'm making a ton of money. I'm able to travel everywhere. And so that money, I basically used part of that to kind of fund my love for surf.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to press pause for a second. We can go. I can let you run all day. Let me go back to a couple questions. One, you're fully sponsored during all of this.
Yeah.
Okay. And you are doing these filming trips and these magazine trips. You can go online. You are cover shots, both ski and snowboard, center spreads all over. So you've made a good name for yourself in there. let's go back to the boosting and just sending these huge ones. You talked about this 70 or 80 footer in this contest. Did you have a world record?
Well, okay, so there was a good group of guys that were known for like big airs, and that wasn't. I enjoyed doing it, but I never really pushed that precipice. There was this guy, John Treeman, who everyone knows back in the day was an incredible aerialist, so to speak. The guy was like a cat. The guy could send anything and just have his body style so perfect, not move a thing, not have his, basically rolling down the windows, and he'd send it. And he was my hero. He was like, you know what? That's what I want to emulate. And that guy was Mr. Smooth. It didn't matter how big. So Warren Miller, he sent this cliff.
Warren Miller did all the movies.
All these movies. They were the things like when snow hit and everybody was getting, ready to get jacked up on skiing, they went and see, the Warren Miller movie, and that was all,
Yep.
So he did this, and I was like, I want to do that. I know I can do it, So long story short, I'm skiing with a couple different film guys, and this is like April. So we got this late April storm, and it's like, 3-4 feet, just insane. And we're up in the Donner backcountry, and we come to this zone where John Treeman sent this cliff for, I think, 130 or something like that feet. And it was just rad. And I just remember he was at the top in the movie, and he basically just steps off, does this rad thing, and just kind of holds it, but no speed or anything, and holds his composure, and then kind of lawn darts. And that's a lot of time. And so his body turned over, and he ended up landing kind of on his shoulder and his back, and then came out of it and just walked out and skied right out of it. And so that was kind of a record. And I was like, whoa. So anyway, long story short, we're skiing this zone. I'm shooting with this guy, Eric Perlman. He's a filmer guy. And so I'm hucking stuff off the side, and he goes, dude, why don't you send the top?
And this is all movie
this was like for filming and stuff. And so he's shooting like 16 millimeter or whatever, old style.
So you send it?
So we get up there, and I'm coming off the sides, and I'm not realizing that it's like 90 feet or whatever off the sides and stuff. And he goes, dude,
so you were doing 90s, not realizing it. You're like so comfortable.
The
snow
in the air was epic, and I was skiing, and I'm in my zone. And at that time, I was at my heyday of like, I could pretty much send anything as long as the snow was good. I mean, if I had to land on hardpack, forget it. I wouldn't do it. So this was an epic day, and I remember I spent majority of the day just picking off these side, sections of that cliff and landing and skiing out of it, and it was just as epic as it gets. And then the sun's starting to go down a little bit, and I get to the top, and he's like, dude, you should just send the whole thing and get a world record. And I was like, the world record thing wasn't really my motivator. I just remember that John Treeman did it, and I love the guy, and I was like, I think I can do it. It was like one of my biggest tests in my mental part of life of like, you're going to do this? You could die. But I mean, the snow was epic. So I was like, I had confidence, I had skill, and the mental capacity of like, you're not going to let yourself die. You're going to be smart. You can check all the boxes, and you're going to send it. You're not going to hit rocks, right? So I'm looking at this whole thing from the top, and the guy on the, the film guy's like, dude, just send it. And I'm just looking at it, and I'm like, well, I need to scope everything out. It's flat at the top. I've got to skate into this thing. I had to put, pine cones and a bunch of like pine tree limbs to kind of do this track that goes into it. And then the track keeps continuing going downhill and then goes off. And I could barely like walk to the edge. So I'm throwing these snowballs, and they're going like 130, 40 feet, whatever, going down, and just perfect snow. I'm like, okay, if I can hold that trajectory. So it's getting dark. I'm like, I'm not doing this, unless it's sunny and killer. And, if I'm going to really do this, I want to do it right. So he was all pissed off, he's like, fuck, dude, and so I'm all, you know what? Let me sleep on it. What's up? So I called John Treeman, and I go, dude, what's your thoughts? And he goes, dude, you can do this. This is no problem. It's in your wheelhouse. You got this. No big deal. So he gave me this confidence. And so I went up there, basically sidestepped everything, looked at it, and, butterflies are going like I've never had that feeling like that, where I'm like, oh, this is gnarly. And at that time, there's an old 40. It's this little highway that kind of goes around and people are driving and suddenly people are parked at the bottom and people scream, "Ah, do it!" And I'm like going, oh, dude, I don't know. And I had a snowboarder buddy. I said, dude, he was my safety. And I said, dude, if I'm not moving, give me 10 seconds. If I'm not moving, you got to come down and get me. And help me. And so I had everything dialed for safety as white trash as it could be, right? So it was like I had my guy, this and that. So anyway, I'm up there and I'm, on the radio. And that was the hard part, was like going, okay, dude, I'm ready in 10. He goes, can you give me a countdown? And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, 5, 4, 3, 2. And I'm like, I can't do this and then put this away and skate. So I said, dude, I'm going to give you 10 seconds. And this went on for like a half hour, where I was like, all right, dude. And finally I was like, all right, 10 seconds, putting it away. I'm sending it, and I'd get back there and I skate into this thing with as much speed as possible, and I just ride the ledge all the way over it, and I didn't even have to lift off. I just went with the contour of the flow off the kicker and went down and just started just floating. And I remember my biggest thing was I did not want to kind of turn or roll. So I'm like rolling my, bringing my hands forward, so it just kept my tips going down, and then suddenly, in the middle of it all, I'm like, oh my God, I started almost going over the front. So suddenly I turned my arms the other way. And this is like...
You have a lot of time to think about
what
you need to do.
It was weird because it was like maybe 2 seconds airtime. That's a lot though. But 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds of airtime where things are changing, but it's going like that. And I remember I do this to kind of get the tips back up, and I lawn dart, go so deep, I like 8 feet deep in a hole. One ski, I blew the bindings out, goes flying, and I'm under and I'm kind of like just wiggling around because with that much force, the snow basically heats up and then freezes really quick so that it can become kind of cement. And so I remember just moving around and I can hear him on the radio, dude, ski out of it, and I'm like on. So I get up, I get out of the thing, and snowboarder buddy's coming down, and I get out and I'm looking at my knees, I'm looking up at what I just did. And then I ski down, on the one ski, and I just was like, dude, I knew I could do it. It was epic.
What?
It ended up being 142 feet, And I didn't ski out of it. I plugged so hard. I made a hole, bigger than 2, basically hot tubs, and came out of it, but not a scratch on me. I skied out of it. He was all pissed off because I didn't ski out of it, but like clean.
142 feet.
Yeah. So, but at that time I didn't know that's what it was.
Is that a 14-story building?
Pretty much. Yeah. So at that time I didn't know or care. That wasn't my motivator. That was a test for me going, I knew I could do it. So I did it. He was like, oh, that's awesome, but you should ski down. I'm like, I don't care, dude. I'm all, you got a cool, I just want the cool footage. That's great.
But those photos, I think it's the photos I've seen, right?
Yeah, there's a couple. I know have many from,
Well, there's photos of you out there, of you boosting, whether it's this one or other one, they're just amazing. And again, because you have world-class photographers shooting all this stuff.
Totally. You got angles, you got this and that.
That's the
it's
other
kind of
thing.
like
If somebody wants to see, just saying, Chuck's Instagram and Chuck's Patterson athlete.com, your website. The photography and cinematography, and you're a GoPro athlete. So the footage of all, you have stuff going back 30 years that is unbelievable on all, that's gotta be really cool. We all wanted to have photos of ourselves, and you've got this incredible library.
And you hit on something that's pretty rad. It was, the sport thing was rad, but when you added the photos of a memory of, and video of, doing something radical, to us it was kind of second nature, but we were very blessed with that. And then I found out a way to make a living and do it all the time. But to go back now, I look at it and go, dude, that's pretty sick. And you're totally right. That's like, wow, to be able to look back at that. It's kind of like when, your dad goes, oh, back in the day, you don't even know, dude, what we did, and I go, that's me now.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you that. Okay, we're going to go back a little bit. So your dad was really focused on your education.
Full bore.
And yet here you go down this path of athlete, hucking it. You're in magazines, you're in movie parts, you're making money, you're sponsored. What did mom and dad think at that point?
My dad had a physics way of looking at it because I would always go to him, especially when it came to doing big airs and stuff. I'd be like, Dad, well, what's, the velocity, of, speed, velocity, this and that, and he'd come up with these rad, little things that I'd look at that he'd write out on, terminal velocity is, at 120 feet, you're going 70 miles an hour or whatever. And it was rad. So he kind of liked that part of it. And the fact that I was doing good. So I'm jumping ahead of myself. Back when my dad, was a nuclear physicist, he'd have his scientist buddies over for dinner and stuff, and they would always pepper me left and right, going, "So, son, were you going to go to Berkeley? What are you going to do?" And I'm like, "I think I'm going to do sports. I think I really love. Somehow I'm going to figure that out." And they'd be, "Oh, it's such a waste of time. Don't do that. You don't want to do that. That's just a waste of time. That's druggies, this and that, whatever. That's just not your thing." And so I just remember that was just always in my head. So then, later on in life, I started doing good at this stuff, and I think my dad. I told him. I just remember when I said I really wanted to go this route. He said, "Well, don't ever look back. You're either going 150% that direction, or you're failing, and I don't want you coming back to me saying you blew it and I was right."
That's pretty rad. So for him to go from like wanting a full like traditional path of education and all this to go just fucking send it.
Yeah. And my mom was all about like, "Oh, you're
fully in.
You do what you want to do as long as it makes you happy and you're successful, and you're not coming back to us going, 'Hey, can I have money?' or whatever." Yeah. It was like, so I was so lucky with how they raised me. I remember, having to every day after school, having to work in the garden and doing stuff and do my homework and this and that. And I was just like always bitter, and at that time I was like going, you know what, it really instilled good work ethic. And if you want anything, you got to work hard for it. So to have that blessing from my dad, I did everything possible to make sure I didn't fail. And I just try. If I couldn't get it, I'd figure it out somehow and I'd make it work. And so the sports thing really kind of came together, and then going from the ski thing to the water thing, really they went hand in hand. And then that's where timing kind of kicked off. So back in the day I learned the sponsorship thing. You could make money, and it was all about magazines. It wasn't about social. We didn't have that yet. So it was about like, dude, a cover pays this, the 2-page spread pays this. We're giving you a photo incentive. So it would be like Smith. And I have a ski company like K2 or whatever. And I remember I had a picture of myself, and I wrote on the picture, like my clothing, okay, is this, and my goggles is this, and skis is this, and poles.
Everything was curated.
Everything I had was free. I never paid for a thing. That was my thing, and so I figured that out. And so when I got into water stuff, it was kind of the same thing. I was able to meet the right people, and kind of a little bit bullshit of like my skills of like, dude, so have you done the toe surf thing? Oh yeah, I've done it now.
Hold on. So the goal was you're doing all the snow stuff. You're all sponsored, and you're like, the toe thing is just starting.
Yeah.
Right. And you're like, I want.
And I was already into surfing. I was living in Northern Cal in Marin County, and we were surfing Ocean Beach. Went to Mavericks a couple times, but it wasn't really a big thing. And I was super confident in big surf. Paddling, hour-long paddle out on big days at Ocean Beach to get good waves. And I was with just a great group of guys that really pushed me. And then from there, so that was kind of my thing. So, it was like from skiing, snowboarding to surf, whatever. And so finally, I kind of found my way to going to Maui and spending time there at the beginning of the winter. So, 3-4 months before winter started. And then the minute there was, snow on the ground, which would be December, I would, basically pack it and then go back. And I would be fully tuned, as far as with a great tan, I'd be doing, windsurfing, toe surfing, surf every day. I was in the water 12 hours a day, and then I'd come back and be like, all right, now we're going to throw it down and do skiing. And I just never got burned out. So for me, having that change, every, 6 months or whatever was invaluable for me to just keep going.
I was going to ask you, do you ever get bored?
Well, that's what kicked me off to the next thing, right? You know, so no, I mean, I was very fortunate with having the changing seasons, and that's kind of where I started going with it. And so, windsurfing, you know, kept going, but then the sport of kite surfing, you know, came out, and I was living there right when that happened, and got to know the right guys, got into it, and I knew the sponsorship game so well to where I basically had to prove myself. But I'd go to these sponsors, go, look, you know, I'm going to do A, B, and C, and I'm going to shoot with these guys, and stuff's going to happen, and I'll get you photos.
You
whatever.
applied the same science from snow
full bore, and it totally worked. So then I got to a point where I had my full sponsors for the wintertime and full sponsors, you know, for surf, and I was making good money, and I was just living to travel and shoot and film. No knowledge of like, maybe you should put that money somewhere. Maybe you should buy a house. Maybe this and that. That didn't matter. I was like just living high on the hog of that was my life, you know? And I was like, I'm going to do that forever. And
were you competing in the in the wind sports?
Yeah. So as I got better at it, the windsurf stuff, I was competing, doing the racing stuff, and it was fun. And then got into wave sailing, but really kind of was a little behind in the wave sailing timing. So I'm, you know, competing against guys like Dave Kalama, Robbie Nash. And so for me, I was like, let's be smart, dude. You're never going to be as good as those guys. You don't live here, you know, full time. So just enjoy it. So I just do shoots and then still get it in the magazines, you know, and then from there, kiting started. I got into that right at the beginning, where companies were just popping up everywhere and they needed riders. And so I went with the top guys that I basically lived with, you know, and we got into kiting and then got on a killer team, and then suddenly was making killer money, traveling all over tropics, you know, getting into it. Got really good at it, you know, and then started competing. They had a tour, the Red Bull made a rad, you know, King of the Air tour about it. And then we would compete in Maui, and then I just get sent everywhere. And then, so that went, and I did a couple of championships in that. And then we had like a world championship at Waddell Creek in Santa Cruz, and I ended up winning that. And then I was like going, dude, this is, I mean, it was just working, you know? And so from there, I got a little burnout, and then suddenly the sport of stand-up surfing and stand-up paddling came about, and I was living down here. And I remember getting a board from Infinity, and it was a tandem board. It wasn't even the stand-up, but I remember watching Laird and those guys paddling on their butts on their board with a kind of a long, you know, outrigger paddle that was as tall as them, and it didn't really look that cool, but I was like, it was a challenge, and I was like, that's cool. So I never really touched it when I was in Maui, but when I got home, I was like, something bugged me about it, and I was like, I got to try it. So I got a board, and I remember going out at Sano, and it was like 3 foot and the white water, and it was like, well, those guys paddle through it, so that's what I got to do. And I remember I was getting hammered by just 3 foot waves, you know, and I could never make it out. And finally, I got it figured out where my footing was, and you know, push comes to shove, and I got better at it. And then the sport turned into racing.
Blew up.
And it was following the prone paddling, because you guys had a rad series of, that was like where it was, and stand-up started growing so much. They were like, all right, dude, let's piggyback off that. You had the Hobie Hennessy's races and stuff. Yep. And so I got into that, signed with Hobie, and was making really good money, and then still balancing the ski side of it. And I wasn't competing anymore, but I was still doing film shoots and stuff like that. So I was holding it all together, kind of milking it to the max, you know? I mean, because for me, what made me happy was to be able to, didn't matter what season it was or what, you know, sport, that I could do it, you know, with friends and go, oh, you know what, today it's kind of windy and shitty, let's go windsurf. All right, let's go. Oh, dude, we got, you know, 4 feet of power, let's go up to top. Yeah, let's do it. So I was kind of at the beginning of the multi-sport athlete, because every time when it was skiing, whatever, they're like, why are you snowboarding? You should just be skiing, concentrating on that. And I'm like, I get kind of burned and I like to change it up. And so when it came to doing the wind sports, you know, the kiting, I still kited a bunch while I was stand-up surfing, because they kind of worked off each other, you know. And then the toe surfing thing, you know, came out. And I remember right at the beginning, it was like, I think in 94 or 93 or whatever, and you know, Laird and Buzzy Kerbacks and those guys were doing it.
Strap crew.
Yeah, and Dave Kalama. And I remember, and this is where you got to throw a couple white lies out there to kind of get your foot in the door. And so I remember some buddies of mine that, you know, were super into tow surfing and knew Laird and whatever. And they're like, dude, we're going out and we got an extra ski. You want to go? And, you know, have you ever done it? Or, you know, I said, oh, yeah, I've towed a bunch over at Mavs and stuff. And, you know, with the strap crew, you know, over there. And it's, you know, I have never done it out here, but totally be stoked to do it. So me and Joe McBride, which is a famous photographer buddy of mine that's seen me and everything, and incredible athlete. And he and I would always go there for the winter and stuff. And then, you know, we'd go back and then I'd film with him and stuff. And so I said, dude, we got to ski, let's go. So we went out with these guys and it was the first time towing, and you know, I just remember watching the videos, this and that, and we figured it out. And suddenly we were towing in, and you know, and it was like maybe triple overhead, you know, at Sprex, and just getting killer waves. And I was like, dude, surfing on steroids. I'm like, this is it right here, you know. And so from that on, I never let up like that. I never did it before. That was my first time. So I was always like, dude, I'll rent the ski or whatever. So the next winter we bought a ski. And we made our way up to Jaws and ended up getting to know Dave Kalama really well, and Rush Randall, which was an amazing athlete.
Big
and
windsurf guy.
Yeah.
Too.
And all these guys had windsurfing as their background. And Dave Kalama, like me, had skiing in the background. You know, he grew up basically in Mammoth. His dad, who just passed away, was a ski patroller at Mammoth. So, I mean, I just look at that and go, dude, I'm where I need to be. I'm with my people. So anyway, long story short, many sessions out at Jaws. This was way before vests, way before helmets, any of that. And we were on these 650, you know, two-stroke skis.
The technology has changed radically.
Oh my God.
The boards,
I mean,
the
it was like,
skis,
I remember towing and whipping off the ski and pulling the back out of, you know, of the ski, just pulling it sideways, you know, and the guy almost falling off so I could get in these waves. And it was just rad. And so I kind of found that all these things really complement each other, and no one could ever tell that I had never done it before. But it's just kind of living there and being in the water and in the element every day kind of gave me that confidence. And I remember we had this one magical day where it was Laird, Dave Kalama, Brett Lickle, and a couple other guys. And it was maybe 6 skis up at Jaws. And it was, I think, Christmas Day or something like that. And it was not a drop of water.
Wow.
It was, you know,
it was conditions.
Perfect. Glassy, big barrels. It was like 25 feet, you know, and just perfect. And so I remember I was getting wave after wave and never taking a beating. And so we were all kind of sitting, you know, in the channel, and Laird, and we're all just kind of talking shit. And Laird, you know, looks over at me, he goes, "You taking a beating today?" And I said, "Not even," you know. I was like, oh, you know.
You jinx yourself?
Yeah. Oh, well, no. So he goes, "Well, that means you're not trying hard enough." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, if you haven't taken a beating, you're not really pushing yourself." And I was like, whoa, dude. I mean, that set heavy for me, because I was like, well, I didn't want to take a beating and get hurt, you know, but I also don't want to be a puss. So sure enough.
When Laird has choice words, right?
Oh, yeah. And he barely talks to you. So when he talks to you, you kind of,
you listen.
At that time, I mean, we had mutual respect. We were just all, you know, windsurf side. It was like, you know, being out there, but I was definitely the guest out of all the people in that lineup. And I had my face up there as much as possible, but at that day, so needless to say,
did you eat shit?
The rest of the session, I ate shit left and right, but I got some incredible tubes. It pushed my thought process to where how important like training was. Like going to the gym was mandatory for me to stay out of the hospital, and for me to push it. I remember many times getting hurt, even skiing, in all the sports, to where the average Joe would have gotten major surgery and would have been out forever. And for some weird reason, I was pretty acclimated and dialed.
Well, one, you've trained yourself to do big things. You probably know how to fall relatively well. Two, if you can't see, Chuck's a friggin' monster. He's super fit, been a gym rat forever, super fit. Like, looks like a football player that just happens to be a board sport.
A small football player.
Well, small. Maybe not the tallest, but definitely... like, listen, I mean, the names you're talking about at the beginning of tow is I mean, that's the strap crew. Those are the guys, the Dave Kalamas, the Lairds, the Brett Lickles, all those guys. And for you to be out there early on and you've never stopped. So if anybody wants to, and I'll post some on there, it's like some of the imagery of you towing massive Jaws, massive Mavericks. Dude, it's incredible. And I wish we could go deep into all of it and all this. But you also, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole on the skis, but one of the niche things that you have done is skied, just like you were talking about skiing big mountain. You've actually done that in big surf. So if anybody, I'm sure people have seen, if you've seen the crazy guy riding skis with poles and massive surf, that's Chuck too. So again, you can go online and find stuff about you at the elite levels of every sport we're talking about. Again, you want to go see him boosting off 140 foot, cliffs. I mean, mountainsides. You can go find Chuck doing that. If you want to go see him riding 60-foot surf, towing on a surfboard or on a foil or on skis, it's really, I mean, there's very few people. You want to go see him boosting on windsurfers or his kite. Like the funny thing is, not funny, when I took kite lesson from you, and unfortunately I realized shortly thereafter, I just didn't have the time to dedicate towards it.
Yeah.
But I watched you get on it. You like, we were just in Long Beach and you just get on this board and you go do like a 50-50 slide. You go just a little like, hey, I'm just going to go do like, I'm going to move the kite from here to there.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was just unbelievable for me to watch. Like, so the skill at every level on all these sports is just rad. And I wish we could go down into all of it, but it's all out there. You can go find all of this stuff. The skis is pretty wild, and the whole process you went through it. I've heard you talk about it before, but like, skiing in giant surf, like,
I mean, it was like one of those things where you have that idea, and talking with other athletes, going, dude, you could probably do it, and then you put what you had on paper or in your head, and then you make it work, and you're like, this is unbelievable that it actually works.
So wild, dude.
Yeah, it was one of those lucky, funny things.
Yeah. Well, but again, I think a lot of what you said is like timing and all the work that you've done to get to a point has allowed you. Like, I ski big mountain, I surf big surf, I'm going to put them together. And like, there's just things that right? You're the front edge of foiling. You've been foiling for a long time. So you can apply that in the big surf, because you like all these things, as you said, have kind of coalesced. But for most people, they look totally separate.
Yeah.
There's snow, there's wind, there's surf, and you're doing them all at this high level. Again, I think I might have said it at the beginning, but like, there's very few people on the planet that have the skill sets that you have to do these things at that level. And these are names somebody you've dropped, like Laird, Dave Kalama, Kai Lenny, all of which are friends of yours. And I think Kai's even a bit of a protege. I know he's a good friend, but like, Kai today is, I don't know that for sure, but Kai today is the guy that's the everything.
Oh, he's the world's best waterman, hands down. And an incredible athlete. And to see him also cross-pollinate in my world of the snow side, I mean, you couldn't tell. I mean, but I have to say that he's had some incredible mentors. His parents were huge in that. And that's why I look at like how my upbringing was parents were a huge part of that. I could have easily gone to Berkeley and, been a scientist, and nothing wrong with that, but that just wasn't my calling and it wasn't really my passion. So I had that lucky part of it. I mean, did I struggle? Sure. But I mean, I really knew what I wanted to do. I didn't know that it was going to be a lifelong pursuit,
Yeah. Pretty rad.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And you're still doing it.
I'm still doing it. Well, I mean, last 2 years have been kind of gnarly.
Yeah, well, let's talk real quick. So I'd like to go back, same question I asked earlier. Your parents today, you lost mom earlier this year. And she seems like she was rad. Like
she was amazing.
And all these years of your folks, and I don't know your dad.
My dad passed like 15 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, a while back.
Before mom passed, I'm sure you guys had some chance to unpack it. Like, they've watched you for the last 30 years chasing your dreams and your passions, doing all this stuff. They pretty stoked? Was mom?
Yeah, I wish my dad was around a little more. I wish he didn't pass so early, because there was some rad stuff that I know he would appreciate it, especially with the foiling and stuff. But he was always in the back of my, head. But my mom was my biggest fan. I mean, I just remember, like, I'd always send her like, packets of magazines or whatever, or she'd find it from a friend, in Tahoe and went, oh my God, I just saw you on the cover. I got 15 of them, and she'd be all stoked, and I was like going, that's rad. Like to have that, cheering fan that was always there and I could always unload stuff. But she basically plowed the way for me as far as like understanding travel and really going for it, because that's how she was. She was a go for it person, from the day you met her. I mean, as our parents get older, obviously things change and they lose the fire, and it's just how it is. But to remember how, I grew up and how blessed I was, and to be able to continue to kind of push that and hopefully influence others, I'm just super lucky, and it's she was amazing.
Yeah. Sorry for your loss, but super rad. And the pictures I've seen of you guys just look super. Yeah. She looks rad and very happy. Like it looked
totally.
So
yeah.
Cool. Good for you.
Yeah.
Let's go down this path of most humans can't do what you do without injuries. I mean, when you're hucking yourself off of cliffs, when you're riding huge surf, when you're strapping skis on your feet with ski bindings and ski boots, when you're in 60-foot surf or whatever it is, wind, when you're everything you do has a high level of risk. I know it's very calculated. All the training's been there. The equipment's gotten better and better and better. But what's been your experience with injuries throughout all of this?
I mean, I've been super lucky. I think a lot of it was either, especially when I was younger, was being out in the elements on the good days and bad days. Way before I was a gym rat was, really paramount to being good at whatever sport you were doing, especially in the snow, times. And just like, when we go to grind it out when we're paddling or whatever, it's not glassy every day. So you go out and it's like 30 knot winds in your face and you're just grinding it out and you're getting, but you power it. And for me, I think I had that mindset of like, it doesn't matter what day it is. And I remember winning like kind of the world championship of stand-up back in 2008. And I just remember training 2 times a day. And it was like the first of its kind event, And
was that Battle of the Paddle?
Yeah, Battle of the Paddle. And that's where everybody was like doing their private little, training runs. And I remember I run into people, early morning before my construction job. And then in the evening, I'd go out and it'd be blown to crap. And I'd be out there doing another, 10 miles or whatever and just getting that mindset. But I just remember that kind of stuff really made the difference for, being good or bad, and I remember there was times where I wanted to give up and I was like, I almost did. And then I was like, what are you thinking, dude? You work so hard for this. You're not giving up. And so that was kind of a cool thing to kind of take on, with all these sports. And when it came to training and stuff and getting hurt, I think I was very lucky that I got into training when I did and how important it was. One, I like to just be able to handle taking a hard crash on skis and be able to walk away with it. And then when I got into the big wave surf thing, I remember taking a couple beatings on some big waves that closed out on me at Jaws and coming up like screaming and laughing, going, dude, that was so sick. And then, the guy on the jet ski, my buddy, just going, dude, you're kind of psycho, dude. Are you okay? And I just remember having that confidence and being so stoked on life that I was like, that kind of pulled me through. And not to say I hadn't had any gnarly, bad crashes. I mean, I remember blowing both my knees out in extreme ski comp at Squaw Valley, and I worked so hard to get there, to get that spot. And it was before our first run of the event, and I remember limping, back to the truck and taking windshield wipers off my truck and duct taping them to my pants to be able to do my first run. Yeah, because I couldn't afford a brace. And I remember I sent it through that, and then I had a doctor buddy of mine gave me 2 braces to borrow for the event, and I made it through the whole event. And it was that kind of mindset, was like, you know what? I'm not letting anything stop me.
How much of everything you've done is mindset versus physical? Like, it sounds like, are you able to flip the switch, like when you send it, or is it your level of confidence? Like, what's been your secret to, not secret
I mean,
success,
back then, I think, because you're young, you're like a rubber band. I had the confidence of the skill, no problem. I did the hard work there. And then I had the confidence of like, I could take a punch. So that was huge for me. So I mean, that really helped in confidence. And then for me, never really thinking hard on what if, and just not letting that be a thing in my mind that always kind of would drag me down. It'd be like, that's not my thought process. It's like, you're going to send it and make it. And there'd be so many people like, dude, this could happen. And I'd have to wash that out of my head and go, no, that's not what I'm looking at. This is what I'm doing. And I do it. And then I'd just move forward, and I'd kind of get away from people that were naysayers, because it was so easy to drag you down. And I just remember like a couple crashes as we get older, or the serious stuff happens when you do stupid stuff. You know, when I think you become too confident and you just kind of go, it's no big deal. So we had one of my recent gnarly ones was we went out to Cortez recently. It was a couple years ago when Garrett McNamara and the whole crew went out.
Cortez Banks, 100-foot wave goal, like truly one of the biggest waves, surfing the biggest waves on the planet.
Exactly. And it was, it's 100 miles out. And so I was at that time on Maui, just got married, mentoring Izzy Gomez, another world-class female stand-up surf athlete. And we were at Jaws. And so I was mentoring her and helping her kind of get her vibe back, because she was kind of in a hole of like, I don't know what I want to do, big wave. And I'm like, you got this. And so anyway, we're out there. She was getting a bunch of waves. And then I got a call, and I'm in the channel, and they're all, dude, this swell that's at Jaws is going to be even bigger, in California. And I'm like, no way. And so then I made a couple calls going, what if we got lucky and the winds were insane and we hit Cortez? It was kind of like a long shot, but I've been out there a couple times, and as luck would have it, everything came together. The conditions were kind of iffy, but there was a window where it could have been insane.
Were you part of the 100-foot wave group?
No. So that was the whole thing.
But the same trip,
It was the same exact trip. I called a good friend of ours, the Rambo family, who owned Riviera Paddles, and they had this beautiful, 100-foot boat. And, I said, hey, got an insane, trip. The idea of like going out there, and we'd been kind of on a couple trips, and he was like, yeah, I think we can pull that together. And I was like, no way. Wow. And so, I told Izzy, you want to push yourself to a whole nother level and surf something that pretty much no one is able to surf except for a handful of people. So anyway, I went from being in the lineup at Jaws and getting on,
scrambling to get back.
Yeah, scrambling to get back. And we got here, the night before, and we set up all the jet skis and stuff to tow, and, got on there, and the mindset was to get her into some rad waves. And for me, it was kind of not really pushing the torch or passing the torch, but it's basically, I'm now kind of slowly turning into, I still want to be in the mix. I'm not pushing it like Kai Lenny and stuff. I'm older, maybe a little wiser. I still love it, want to be in the mix, and I'm still going to push it, but it was really kind of to pave the way for her and go, hey, look, this is a great opportunity. I know this wave as good as anybody. Let's make it happen. This would be awesome for you.
You've been out there before?
Yeah, several times. Yeah. And so we get out there. You leave the night before, you get out there, sun starts to pop. It is probably the orangest, reddest, radical skies, glassy conditions, oil slick glass, and just like fire in the sky. I mean, amazing.
And again,
sunrise.
100 miles offshore, you don't see land, but there's waves breaking because there's a shallow atoll.
Exactly. So there's like a shallow kind of like bench shelf. But
again, you can watch this whole session you're talking about on 100-foot wave, like on HBO.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Totally. And they do a great job.
Yeah.
So we get out there, and we kind of had the idea they were going to make it there, but there was all this talk in the big wave thing going, forget it. They're going to go here, and we're over it. And we were like going, I just want to go. If we can go, let's just go and make it happen. We got a good crew of people.
What happened?
So we get out there, and suddenly you see like 5-6 miles with the binoculars. You're all, there's like white water. And you're all, that's it. And so as we get closer, we're just like, fiending. We're getting our wetsuits on, and we're like, no way. And so when you look through the binoculars, it looks like it's maybe 10 foot, nothing big. But for it to actually break, it's got to be a certain size. So we get out there, and we're thinking we're the only one. We're all, no way, they didn't make it. And then sure enough, they come the other side and come down, and we got our skis in the water. We get out just to kind of scope it. And then those guys come out and we're like,
just because there's going to be a lot of people in the water.
And we were just going, it's HBO, it's the top, top GMAC and everybody, and all phenomenal athletes, but it's just,
gonna be a lot of people
wanted it to be, whatever. And so it wasn't a bummer, but it was one of those things where like, let's make it happen. So we get everything together, we get a plan. I'm like, all right, Izzy, let's go out there and let's just scope it out. And then I tow into a couple waves and I'm like, all right, now I know where to sit. Let's get you out there.
Hold on. So scoping, AKA, is for Chuck to go get some waves.
Well, basically we scoped it. We checked it out. We saw that this bowl was breaking. The west bowl was kind of moving around, whatever. And then it was like, let me get out. So I had another buddy of mine put me in. He was kind of water safety guy. And
hold on. I'm sorry to shut you down here a little bit, but what happened? Izzy get some waves. You got hurt on this trip.
Yeah. So this is where I'm going to. So basically, I got a couple waves, and then I grab Izzy, and then I go, all right, well, let's get you in a couple waves, baby steps. She was kind of a little nervous. I was kind of a little nervous because it was kind of big on the sets, and it's just, you're out there, 100 miles out.
Exposed.
There's no land to look at. The only thing you're looking at is the boats that are way outside in the channel in deep water.
So like lining up is a problem.
Lining up, you have a buoy, but it's really not. You kind of you can look and then you suddenly feel like 360. You're like, you don't know where you are. So you're out there. You've got the skis. Kind of they've got like 4 or 5 skis out there, and so every time a set would come, everybody would start to drive, and you try to get your pecking order, and it was kind of impossible. So we're fighting 3 full teams, and we just have our one team, and it's like those guys are aggressive, and it's just like, man. So there'd be a set of 3 waves would come through, and suddenly we'd be, the last person. Then finally we'd be first in line and whatever, and it was really hard, And so anyway, long story short, I get a couple waves. I get Izzy out there. She gets a couple waves. She gets one really good one, and then she wants to take a break. And I'm like, cool. Let me tow into a couple. So at that time, the sets are starting to come.
How big was it?
It was probably 40. Maybe 50 foot, I'm not trying to downplay it, but in the realm of big wave surfing, it's like 60 to 80 is big. So it wasn't massive, but it was still just magical, insane, just glassy and big waves. And not all the waves were perfect. There were some big barrels, but it's just different out there. If it was bigger, it would have been insane, but still great. So I get a couple waves. Then finally this one big set comes. Everybody's going one by one. Everybody gets a wave. I get this one really deep. I go down the line. I kind of pull in the pocket. And I'm looking down the line going, I don't know if you're going to make this barrel, but I just keep going down in the barrel. And then I look up at the lip and I see this wave kind of came in sideways, and it looks like now the lip's going to kind of clamshell, kind of shut on its, just roll on itself and pretty much take me out. And I was like, and this is all happening in like within a second. And I'm like, all right, well, if I ride up to it and just jump off my board and punch through the lip, I'll, be safe. I won't get hammered. So that was kind of my plan, not the best plan, but I couldn't really straighten out.
50 miles an hour.
Yeah, and I couldn't go straight down the line and go straight out and have a blow up behind me. I just thought that was worse. So sure enough, I'm down the line and I'm watching the thing scallop, and I'm like, oh man, the whole lip's coming down. So I go to jump off my board and out of my foot straps, and my timing was split second off, and the lip hit me square in the back. I mean, hit me so hard. Like, when you get hit hard in the head, you kind of hear like a snap or like something just kind of, hits. It hit me so hard that it knocked me out. And because I don't remember, I don't remember anything. I just remember it hit. I felt like I fell off a 3-story building and hit my head on pavement. I just was out. And then I don't remember anything. And then suddenly I'm underwater and I kind of come to, and I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm like, oh my God. And so I'm like swimming as hard as I can to get to the top. I get to the top.
You had not inflated.
I couldn't even find my inflation. Wow. I was like so dazed and confused. So I get to the top and I'm like, and I watch a jet ski pass me already. Like, I got up late and I just turn around and the next wave just detonates on me. And I'm like, I'm just getting up a little bit too late. Detonated. I finally go under again. I come up and I'm like looking down. I'm like, where's my pull tabs? And I finally find, where one is or whatever. And I get detonated again. And finally I pull, and I'm still having to swim up like it's not helping. And I get to the top And finally, by the fourth wave,
Oh my God.
my partner gets to me. But there was a part, the third wave, where I'm looking around and I see the jet ski. Looks like he's like 4 football fields away. No one around. I'm in whitewater, pumping surf, and I'm like, dude, this is it. If you don't fight, this is the last view you're going to see, And I was tripping out. And then, took one more wave on the head, and finally he got to me, and I was all pissed off. Like, what are you leaving me in the goddamn white water for? And, he couldn't get to
5
me.
waves.
Yeah. So, and then I pop up and I can barely get on the rescue sled. My arm is kind of not working, whatever. And I get up and I kind of bend and curl into a ball, and I'm like going, dude, something's not right with my back. And I felt like my ribs were kind of effed up, but I had a super tight vest on, along with my wetsuit and everything. So it was like a girdle almost, and I'm like, all right. And I was stubborn. So I'm like, that's it. I'm just gonna sit on ski. I came here for Izzy. It's not about me. It's like, I'm not going into the boat. I'm going to stay out here and I'm going to tow her into a couple more waves. And I bit the bullet. I could barely breathe, And so I just kind of stayed out there and was like, there was too much money involved for getting us out there. This doesn't happen every day. This was like, suck it up.
So what was it?
So basically, So yeah, at the end of the whole thing, I get out of my wetsuit when we're traveling back home. I could barely walk. I'm thinking I broke something in my back. So I get home, do CT scan, all these different scans, and find out that I basically broke, is it my T12 or whatever? And then the other one down below it. And then part of the spinal processes were shattered. And I tore my shoulder. And then I compressed and fractured 3 ribs.
How long ago was this? 3 years?
This was 3. Yeah, this will be 3 years ago. And it was Friday the 13th. So prior to when we got on the boat, someone had brought bananas, and I had said, "Dude, not a good thing. Throw those out." But no one did. So I'm just looking at Friday the 13th. All these things came about.
Well, listen. So gnarly.
Yeah.
And I ask you. Not only did you go through this a couple of years ago, that gnarly injury, clearly you've come back from, but you've also gone through a pretty gnarly process with your wife, had a pretty gnarly injury as well. So you guys have had to, like you said, like life's pretty interesting. Like you've been able to go pretty hard, and that, like things change, right?
Totally. And that was a pretty solid life lesson that I think many have endured. Way more than me, but I mean, where it really kind of shut things down. So when my wife got a traumatic brain injury, she got a concussion training at the gym, and I treated it like a normal concussion, like all of us would get, and I've had several, but knock on wood, I've been fine. But the next day she woke up and couldn't speak, and it was our worst nightmare. She couldn't find a word. Everything for concussion signs, as far as couldn't be out in the sun, had to be in a dark room for 2 months, and depressing as all hell. And now the focus for me, charging waves, doing anything, thrown out the window, going, no, it's about family now. It's like about my wife. It's like, we just got married, and this was it. So it was a life change where I had to really learn about patience. I had to bail on thinking about surf or any of that, where it was all about her, and the things changed. Like all the things I take for granted, or we all take for granted, that our partner does behind the scenes that we don't think about, like balancing checkbooks and accounts, keeping the house together. I just was suddenly, that was in my pocket, and I was like totally humbled. Like, oh my God.
Well, I remember from the outside, and other people that know you and follow you would have seen it as well, but like your posts are always athletics related.
Yeah.
Stoked, big smiles, like rad, just underwater, just really amazing stuff. Sharks, there's a lot of there's killer stuff. But this was the first time I saw like the other side. You had done a post about Trish and what you guys were going through. And I think most of us went, oh, it was the most like social media can get accused of often of fake this and fake that.
For sure.
But like this was as like authentic and honest Chuck Patterson.
And for me, it was a very hard post. I came to a point where we spent a ton of money, and I kind of sat there going, I'm going to sell boards, whatever it takes to get my wife normal. This isn't going to be our life, and humbling, emotional, gnarly. Like I'd never, like the hardest thing was that, you know, and then to put a post out there and ask for help, dude, that was the hardest thing. Wasn't my MO. I was always, I don't need help. I can do it. I'll make it happen. And then to do that, it took me days, if not a week or whatever, to kind of even just put a simple video, and I was never happy with it. And then I was like going, you know what? I need help. And then so I started a GoFundMe. I didn't know what to do. You know, I was at the wit's end going, I want her to get the best care. I want her to get better, but I don't think we can afford it, you know? And then GoFundMe, the community that I have out there was godsend. I mean, it was insane. So awesome. To have that support, it brightened our day. It changed everything. It made us have a whole different outlook on life, going, you know what? We're loved by a lot of people. They want us to get better. We need to get better. For them, we need to make this happen. And it allowed my wife to have a total different, you know, outlook on life, and going, you know what, I'm going to do everything it takes to get going. And she knows now everything about traumatic brain injury, and she's still a ways away from it. But without that help, we wouldn't have gotten that jump start to really kind of help her get to where she is now. I mean, now she's doing good, and it really kind of put things in perspective is how lucky, you know, blessed I have been with the life and what I've done, and being able to, you know, follow my dreams and be around amazing, inspiring people at the same time, become a better man, and, you know, take care of my wife, which a lot of people are great at. But for me, that wasn't really, like, I didn't understand that until that time where she really needed me. And we've been through hell and back, you know, like many couples, you know, and we're tighter than ever. Right. And from the darkness of, you know, when you think like, dude, everything just gets worse. Now things have just gotten amazing, you know, and it's just cool to see that life is like that, you know. And it's really, I attribute that to the people you surround yourself, you know, by, and being able to let go of certain things and just kind of go with the flow and just be positive. So it's been a major life change for me, but I think maybe a blessing in disguise, something that I needed to kind of slow things down, you know, and put it in perspective. But now I'm fired up, you know, and she's doing better, and we're going to still continue that path of getting her better. But it's also for me to get better, and I'm ready to go back into the sports thing and still have that balance of family, which I think is extremely important.
Rad. Good for you. Well, listen, I'm really glad to hear that she's on the mend.
Yeah.
Real quick, just because I think that led us right into it. You do a fair bit of stuff with philanthropies as well, which I just want to give you kudos and commend you on it. Seems like applying your personality and your attitude and your skill set with these organizations that benefit from you seems like a pretty cool tie. Has that been cool for you? Has that been
It's been actually more medicine to me than the other way around. I mean, working with Miracles for Kids, working, you know, with cancer patients, working with adaptive athletes has been kind of my favorite. And like High Fives is an incredible foundation out of Tahoe. And I'm around, whether it's military or athletes that have maybe one leg, you know, and they are still pushing it. And for me to be there to witness that, or help them get confidence and help them stay safe in the water, snow, whatever, is just so empowering. I mean, for me, it's addicting. And I love being around people like that, where it's like they don't let anyone say no. They just go, I'm going for it. I'm going to make it happen. And it doesn't matter what it takes. I'm going to do the hard work. And it's so inspiring, you know. Right. It's incredible. So I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, giving back is a darn good thing. So
it's huge,
especially when you can make a real impact, especially with what you bring to the table. So thanks for doing that. Hey, so you mentioned a couple minutes ago, you're like, I'm fired up and I'm getting back. Like so you're managing all the stuff as we've gotten older.
Yeah.
Again, to be a mid-50s guy trying to do things that put your life potentially at risk and hucking, probably had to pivot a little bit. What are you doing now and what's next?
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. Like, we hate to say, like, okay, I'm shutting it all down.
No, we're never saying that. We're not shutting anything down.
No, but I mean, where people are like, well, you can't do that forever. And maybe that's what I needed, was something like that, to basically say, hey, dude, let's figure out life first. And then, so now I've got a better idea on that. And I'm re-inspired by being around high five athletes, being back in the game, knowing that my wife is doing better. We got our new dream home. Little things that maybe doesn't matter to a lot of people, for us has been huge. And it's allowed me to gain confidence again now and be like going, we're in a good place. Now I want to give back. So I want to do more stuff with, adaptive athletes. I want to dig and dive deeper, to be able to coach and help people find their magic. And working with athletes like Izzy Gomez. I've watched her grow up. She's a phenomenal female athlete, ripping surfer, and help her be more comfortable in big wave surfing. At that same thing, I want to also get back on it. I just want to get back in the flow of charging big waves, and I don't have to be on everything and chase it. And then same with skiing, going back in the backcountry and just enjoying life. I mean, there was some rad thing about when GoPro got in the mix and we were bringing the cameras, and kind of showing that feeling of sending it or being in the best place possible on earth, doing what you love and being able to inspire others to do the same thing. You always had a camera to show everything, or working with top film guys to always capture the goods. And there was a point where when I kind of dropped all the sponsor stuff and just put my head down to take care of life, I didn't have that inspiration to go and just, when people were like, dude, let's go ski, I wasn't motivated anymore. I didn't feel the fun. Like, I enjoyed shooting. I really enjoyed skiing with top guys and kind of, getting in that uncomfortable zone and getting fired up. And so it's been a weird thing to kind of like get re-inspired, but now I think I've got a lot of good, going and to kind of push forward. I'm just re-motivated and just being inspired by different people, instead of my lifelong heroes, which will always be there, but being able to put time into people that need a little help. It kind of re-inspires me. So, I think I'm in it. I think where I was wondering where I need to be at this part, I think I've got a little clear idea of, why I'm here.
Rad.
Yeah.
Well, Chuck, first and foremost, I see a prone paddler. I know you've been paddling prone. That makes me so happy. But I know you've been paddling with some of the boys down in Dana, and just one more way that Chuck will be faster or better than me in about 5 minutes. But Chuck, so rad to have you here. Thank you so much for sharing. We could have gone hours and hours and hours, because there's so many things I would have loved to gone down the Chuck Patterson rabbit hole on the towing stuff and the foiling stuff, like a lot of stuff we didn't get into. But again, it's out there for people to find out more. But really cool. I really appreciate you sharing a lot of the story and the path and even some of the harder stuff. But
well, dude,
cool.
I got to say, you pull it out perfectly.
Well,
it's great to talk story and kind of bring up some great memories of the past where you're just like, right on, man. And so now I'm, re-inspired to just keep going.
Yeah, well, at the highest level. Dude, you're the man. Thank you so much,
Hey,
Chuck.
thank you
Always
so
good
much,
to see you,
man.
brother.
Awesome.